I walked in and saw my family on the sofa. My husband, my mother, my son, and my own sister. "What's wrong?" I asked, fearing the worst. "Mom, sit down," my son said. "You need to accept a new reality. You're not in charge of this family anymore. Aunt Beatrice is. She makes Dad happier now." I was furious. They all knew. I left the room without a word. The next day, I had 118 missed calls. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know what city you're watching from. Please feel free to share it in the comments. Now let me pull you into this story." The November wind whipping off the Long Island Sound was sharp that night, the kind of cold that cuts through your coat and settles in your bones. I had just landed at JFK, after 3 exhausting days in Chicago, salvaging a deal my husband Marcus had nearly torpedoed with his arrogance. I was exhausted. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my shoulders ached from the weight of my laptop bag. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of Cabernet, and the comfort of my own home. I wanted to tell Marcus I'd fixed his mess, that the Vance Fuentes real estate empire we'd built over 22 years was safe for another quarter. I pulled my car into the driveway of our estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. The living room lights were on, blazing against the dark frost-covered lawn. It was strange. Normally the house was quiet by 10 p.m. Marcus would be in his study, and my 1-year-old son Jacob would be in his room playing video games or out with friends. I opened the front door, dropping my keys into the bowl on the foyer table. The silence that greeted me wasn't peaceful. It was thick. It felt charged like the air before a thunderstorm. "Hello," I called out, hanging up my coat. "Marcus, Jacob, I'm home. Evelyn, we're in the living room." My mother's voice drifted out from the sitting area. My stomach clenched. My mother, Carol, lived 40 minutes away in Westchester. What was she doing here on a Tuesday night? A sudden panic seized me. Had something happened to my sister, Beatrice? Was someone sick? I rushed toward the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. But it wasn't a medical emergency. It was a tribunal. They were all there, arranged on the designer leather sofa I'd picked out last Christmas. Marcus sat in the center, impeccably dressed in a crisp white shirt, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. To his left was my mother, Carol, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. To his right, Beatrice, my younger sister. And in the armchair nearby, my son Jacob. The atmosphere was suffocating. No one was crying. No one looked sad. They looked resolved. "What's going on?" I asked, my breath catching. "Is everyone okay?" "Mom," I took a step forward, but Jacob stood up. He didn't come to hug me. He planted himself like a security guard blocking a door. He looked at me with eyes devoid of the warmth I had cultivated for 2 decades. "Mom, sit down," Jacob said. His voice was cold, deeper than I remembered, stripped of all affection. "You need to listen and not make a scene." "A scene, Jacob, you're scaring me." "What is this? You need to accept a new reality," he continued, reciting words that sounded rehearsed. "You're not in charge of this family anymore." I looked at Marcus. "Marcus, why aren't you saying anything?" Marcus finally looked up. His handsome face, the face that had been the public image of our company for years, was twisted in a mask of pity mixed with annoyance. "It's over, Evelyn. The charade is over." "What charade?" I felt like I was drowning on dry land. "Aunt Beatrice," Jacob said, gesturing to my sister. "She makes Dad happier now. Unlike you, she gets him." The world stopped spinning. I stared at Beatrice, my little sister, whose rent I'd paid for 6 years, whom I'd hired when no one else would give her a job. She sat there, legs crossed, wearing a silk blouse that looked suspiciously like one missing from my closet. And then I saw it. Marcus's hand was resting casually, possessively, on Beatrice's knee. "We didn't want you to find out from a stranger," my mother, Carol, chimed in. Her voice wasn't apologetic. It was a lecture. "We wanted to do this as a family. Evelyn, you have to be realistic. You've been married to your job for years. Marcus is a man with needs. He needs a wife who is present, not a business partner who sleeps with her laptop." "Mom," I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. "You knew about this. You're approving this. I'm supporting happiness," Carol said, her chin lifting defiantly. "Beatrice and Marcus share a connection. They love each other, Evelyn. It's not something they planned. It just happened. You can't punish them for falling in love." I looked at Beatrice. She offered a small, triumphant smirk. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her gaze dropping. On her finger, glinting under the recessed lighting, was a diamond ring. Not a new ring. My ring. It was the antique Art Deco diamond Marcus had given me for our 20th anniversary. the one that had mysteriously vanished from my jewelry box 6 months ago. I had turned the house upside down, looking for it, crying for days. Marcus had told me I was careless, that I'd probably lost it at the gym. "That's my ring," I said, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it felt hot in my throat. "It looks better on her," Marcus said with a shrug. "It was wasted on you. You never wear jewelry anyway." "We want you to move out," Jacob said, breaking the silence again. "Dad's keeping the house. I'm staying here. It's better if you just go. You create too much tension. My son, my boy, whom I'd nursed through fevers, whose college tuition I paid by working 8 zero-hour weeks, was kicking me out of the house I built. "You're choosing this," I asked him, tears finally stinging my eyes. "You're choosing the woman who is sleeping with your father behind my back. She's your Aunt Jacob." "She's not just my aunt anymore," Jacob snapped. "She's the only one who actually listens to me. You just throw money at me and tell me to study. Dad and Beatrice, they treat me like an adult." I looked at the four of them, my husband, my sister, my mother, my son. The 4 pillars of my life, and every single one was rotten. They weren't just breaking my heart. They were dismantling my existence with a cruelty that left me breathless. A wave of nausea hit me, but I swallowed it down. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would not scream. I would not beg. I straightened my spine. I looked at Marcus, locking my eyes on his until he flinched and looked away. "You think you've won," I said, my voice quiet but deadly calm. "You think you can just rewrite history because you're bored and selfish. Don't make a scene," Evelyn Beatrice said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Let's be mature about this divorce." "Divorce?" I let out a short, dry laugh. "Oh, you have no idea what's coming." "Don't threaten us, Marcus," snapped his arrogance returning. "I've already talked to the lawyers. You're out. The prenup, the company bylaws. I've got it all covered. You walk out that door, Evelyn. If you stay, I'll have security remove you from my property." "Your property?" I looked around the room. I chose every tile in this house. I paid for every brick. "And now you're trespassing," Jacob said. That was it. The final break. I looked at my son one last time, memorizing the face of the stranger he'd become. "All right," I said. I turned. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't pick up my keys from the bowl. I had my spare set in my pocket. I walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Carol yelled, a sudden anxiety in her voice. "Evelyn, we need to discuss the settlement. Marcus has a generous offer if you sign tonight." I didn't answer. I pulled open the heavy oak door and stepped out into the frigid Connecticut night. The wind hit my face, drying the tears before they could fall. I got in my car, the engine roaring to life in the silent driveway. As I backed out, I saw them through the picture window. They were already pouring champagne. They were celebrating my erasure. I drove into the darkness, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. The Evelyn they knew, the doormat, the provider, the fixer, had died in that living room. And the woman driving away was someone they should be very, very afraid of. If you're listening to this and you're as furious as I was in that moment, please hit the like button and comment with the number 1 below. Let me know you're with me. Your support tells me I'm not alone in this fight. Comment 1 now, because believe me, what they did next makes this betrayal look like just the warm-up. I drove for an hour, the lights of the city blurring into red and gold streaks across my windshield. My mind was a chaotic storm of images, Beatrice's smirk, the ring on her finger, Jacob's cold stare. But beneath the shock, a primal instinct was kicking in. Survival. I needed gas. The warning light had been on since I left the airport, but I'd been too eager to get home to stop. Now, on a desolate stretch of the Merritt Parkway, I pulled into a 2-4-hour gas station. My hands were shaking as I stepped out into the biting cold. I swiped my credit card, the platinum card linked to our joint account, the one I used for everything from groceries to business dinners at the pump. Processing. The screen flashed red. Declined. Please see cashier. I frowned. Impossible. The credit limit on that card was $50,000, and I'd paid the bill in full 3 days ago. I tried again. Declined. A cold knot formed in my stomach, heavier than the betrayal I'd just witnessed. I dug through my wallet and pulled out my personal debit card, the one linked to my checking account where my salary was deposited. I went inside the station. The clerk, a bored teenager with headphones around his neck, didn't even look up as I put a bottle of water and a pack of gum on the counter. I swiped the debit card. "No go," he mumbled, chewing his gum. Try it again, I said, my voice tight. There's money in there. He sighed and ran it again. Declined, ma'am. Insufficient funds or card blocked. You got cash. I just stood there frozen under the harsh fluorescent lights. My banking app. I had to check my app. My fumbling fingers found my phone as I logged in. Access denied. User authentication failed. Please contact your branch. I tried the company account. Access denied. I tried the joint savings account. Access denied. Marcus hadn't just kicked me out. He'd executed a financial kill switch. He'd been planning this. You don't get a co-owner locked out of business and personal accounts instantly unless you've laid the groundwork with the bank falsely claiming fraud or changing administrative privileges days in advance. He wanted me destitute. He wanted me stranded in the middle of the night with no resources, so I'd come crawling back and sign whatever generous offer Carol had mentioned. I rummaged in my purse past the useless plastic to the small zippered pocket at the bottom. I found 3 crumpled $20 bills and a handful of change. $60. That was my net worth at this moment. I paid for $20 of gas and the water with cash. I got back in my car trembling not just from the cold but from the terrifying realization of my vulnerability. I couldn't go to a hotel. I had no credit card for a deposit. I couldn't go to my mother's. I couldn't go to Beatrice's. I drove until I found a roadside motel with a flickering neon vacancy sign. It was the kind of place where truckers sleep for a few hours, the kind of place where the sheets smell like stale smoke and regret. Pay in advance, the night manager said through a bulletproof glass window. $50 for the night. I passed him 50 of my remaining $60. He slid a key through the tray. Room 12. The room was freezing. The heater rattled and spat out air that smelled like burnt dust. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, still in my expensive business suit, my coat pulled tight around me. I looked at my phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. No apologies. No please come back. 118 missed calls. Most were from a number I recognized, Marcus's personal lawyer, a shark named Richard Valentino. And then the emails started coming in. Subject marital dissolution agreement. Subject urgent NDA required. Subject notice of termination. Vance Fuentes Properties. I opened the termination notice first. It was a PDF attached to an email from the head of HR, a woman I had hired, a woman I had mentored. Dear Miss Fuentes, effective immediately, your position as Chief Operating Officer is terminated for cause. Allegations of corporate espionage and gross negligence. I laughed. A harsh, raw sound in the empty room. Espionage negligence. I was the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. auditing the books. I was the one who knew every zoning law in the tri-state area. Marcus didn't even know how to convert a PDF without asking me for help. And then a text came through. It was from Jacob. My thumb hovered over the screen, some small, foolish part of me hoping he'd snapped out of it that he was sorry. Mom, don't make this harder. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition and the trust fund if you fight the divorce. He promised me the VP position next year if I stick with him. You always told me to be ambitious. I'm just doing what you taught me. Please understand. I dropped the phone on the bed like it was burning. That was the final erasure. Marcus hadn't just taken my money and my job. He had purchased my son's soul. He had used the wealth I helped build to bribe my own child against me. I curled up on the dingy bedspread, my knees pulled to my chest. The tears finally came hot and fast. I cried for the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. I cried for the sister I'd protected on the playground. I cried for the husband I'd believed in when he was nothing but a smile and a cheap suit. But as the night wore on and the tears dried into a crusty salt on my cheeks, something else began to settle in my chest. It was cold and heavy like a stone. They thought they had erased me. They thought by taking away the credit cards and the passwords they had taken away my power. They forgot one thing. They forgot who built the castle they were sitting in. They forgot who designed the security systems, who drafted the contracts, and who knew where all the bodies were buried. Marcus thought Vance Fuentes Properties ran on his charm. He was about to learn that it ran on my brain. And while he might have stolen the keys to the front door, he'd forgotten that the architect always leaves a back door. I stared at the water stain on the ceiling, waiting for the sun to rise. I wasn't Evelyn the wife anymore. I wasn't Evelyn the mother. I was Evelyn the architect. And I was about to bring the whole house down. Sleep was impossible in that motel room. The drone of highway traffic was a constant hum, but it was the noise in my head that kept me awake, the sharp, jagged memories replaying on a loop. To understand why I was lying on a dirty mattress with $10 to my name, I had to go back. I had to look at the foundations of my life and realize they'd been cracked from the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the older of two daughters. My father died when I was 7, leaving my mother Carol to raise us alone. His death broke something in her. Or maybe it just revealed who she truly was. She was a woman who needed to be adored to be the center of attention, and she projected that need onto her daughters. Or rather, one of them. Beatrice was born beautiful even as a baby. She had golden curls and big blue eyes that made strangers stop on the street. I was plain brown hair, serious eyes, sturdy. I was the responsible one. Beatrice was the princess. I remember the day I turned 18. I had just gotten my acceptance letter to NYU's Stern School of Business on a partial scholarship. It was my ticket out. I'd worked 3 part-time jobs through high school, tutoring, waitressing, shelving books at the library to save for the rest of the tuition. I ran into the kitchen, waving the letter. "Mom," I got in. Carol was at the table painting Beatrice's nails. Beatrice was 12 then, already demanding and petulant. "That's nice, Evelyn," my mother said, not looking up. "But keep your voice down. Beatrice has a headache." "But Mom, it's NYU. It's the business program." Carol sighed, finally looking at me. Her eyes weren't filled with pride, they were calculating. "Evelyn, honey, we need to talk about that money you've saved up. My college fund, well, Beatrice has been scouted. There's a modeling competition in Miami next month. It could be her big break. But the fees, the travel, the portfolio shots, it's expensive." My heart sank. "Mom, that's my tuition money. I earned that." "You're so selfish," Evelyn Beatrice chimed in, blowing on her wet nails. "You don't want me to be famous. When I'm rich, I'll buy you a car, Evelyn," my mother said, her voice taking on that tone, the one that mixed guilt with a command. "You're the strong one. You're the smart one. You can always find a way. You can work another year, take night classes. But Beatrice, she's delicate. This is her dream. You wouldn't want to crush your sister's dream, would you? Families sacrifice for each other." I gave them the money. Of course I did. I had been conditioned for 18 years to believe my value lay only in what I could provide for them. I was the scapegoat, the workhorse, the fixer. Beatrice was the golden child, the star, the one who deserved to shine. Beatrice went to Miami. She didn't get signed. She spent the money on clothes and theme parks. I spent the next year working double shifts at a diner to earn the money back. I started college a year late, exhausted but determined. That dynamic never changed. It just evolved. When I graduated at the top of my class, my mother didn't come to the ceremony because Beatrice was having severe anxiety over a breakup with a 2-week boyfriend. I walked across the stage alone. When I got my first big promotion at a financial consulting firm, my mother said, "That's great, honey. Hey, can you lend Beatrice $2,000? Her landlord is being a real jerk." I paid Beatrice's rent. I paid for her car repairs. I paid for her acting classes that she never attended. I bought my mother a condo so she wouldn't have to worry about stairs. I thought I was buying their love. I thought if I just gave enough, worked enough, fixed enough problems, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Beatrice. I thought one day my mother would look at my face and say, "I am so proud of you, Evelyn. You are my joy." But I was never her joy. I was her utility bill. I was her safety net. And then I met Marcus. He was charming, ambitious, and he seemed to see me. He told me I was brilliant. He told me I was beautiful. I didn't realize then that he had the same calculating look in his eyes as my mother. He didn't see a soulmate. He saw a host. He saw a woman trained to give everything and ask for nothing in return. He fit perfectly into the hollowed-out space in my heart that my mother and sister had emptied. I married him thinking I was building a new family, a better one. Lying in the dark motel room, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I hadn't escaped my family dynamic by marrying Marcus. I had recreated it. Marcus was the golden child, demanding adoration and resources. I was still the scapegoat, working in the shadows to keep the lights on. And Beatrice was just the inevitable conclusion. The two parasites in my life had finally found each other. "You're the strong one, Evelyn." My mother's voice echoed in my memory. Well, she was right about one thing. I was strong. Strong enough to carry them for 40 years. And God help them, I was now strong enough to drop them. I sat up in bed, the metal springs creaking. I wasn't going to cry anymore. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. They wanted the delicate Beatrice. They wanted the dreamer Marcus. Fine. They could have each other. But they could not have my money. They could not have my company. I picked up my laptop bag. It was time to stop being the sacrificial daughter. It was time to be the CEO liquidating toxic assets. The morning sun filtered through the grimy curtains of the motel room, casting long, dusty shadows on the floor. I opened my laptop. Thankfully, I had a portable Wi-Fi hotspot in my bag, a habit from years of business travel. Marcus couldn't cut off a device he didn't know existed. I didn't go to the bank accounts yet. I knew those doors were locked tight. Instead, I opened a file called VF, Archive 1. To understand how I was going to destroy Marcus, you have to understand how I built him. I met Marcus 22 years ago at a real estate networking event in Midtown Manhattan. He was 29, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, holding a glass of cheap wine and commanding the attention of a group of investors. He was electric. He had a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo, a laugh that made you feel like the funniest person in the world. I was 25, a junior analyst at one of the big consulting firms, standing in a corner clutching my binder of market research. I watched him work the room. He was charismatic, yes, but I could hear what he was saying. He was slinging buzzwords, making promises about returns that were mathematically impossible. He cornered me by the buffet. "You look like you're analyzing the structural integrity of the shrimp skewers," he joked. "No," I smiled. "I'm analyzing your pitch to those investors. You're promising a 15% ROI on a property in a declining district. You're going to lose them their money." He blinked, surprised. Then he laughed. "Okay, you got me. I'm a big picture guy, not a numbers guy. I need someone who understands the boring stuff." "The boring stuff is what keeps you out of prison," I said dryly. He fell in love with me, or at least with what I could do for him right then and there. Within 6 months, we were married. Within a year, we founded Vance Fuentes Properties. The division of labor was set immediately. Marcus was the face. He was the CEO. He took the client meetings, he played golf with developers, he gave interviews to the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. He loved the spotlight, loved the title. I was the architect. I was the COO, but really I was everything else. I found the properties negotiated, the loans managed, the contractors battled with the city over zoning permits, did the taxes, the payroll, the legal compliance. Our first big project was a disaster in the making. Marcus had bought a dilapidated warehouse in the Bronx, convinced it would be the next big loft conversion. He overpaid by $500,000. The contractor he hired ran off with the deposit. We were on the brink of bankruptcy before we'd even sold a single unit. I remember sitting at our kitchen table pregnant with Jacob, staring at the red numbers in the ledger. Marcus was pacing, panicking, sweating through his shirt. "We're finished, Evelyn," he was moaning. "My reputation is ruined. They're going to sue me." "Sit down," I ordered. I took my grandmother's jewelry, the one inheritance I'd received safe from my mother and Beatrice, and sold it. I cashed out my $401K. I renegotiated the terms with the bank, presenting a business plan so detailed, so bulletproof, that the branch manager said it was the best he'd ever seen. I fired Marcus's buddy, who was acting as project manager, and took over construction oversight myself, walking through active sites with a hard hat and a 6-month baby bump. We finished the project. We sold out in 3 weeks. Marcus was hailed as a visionary in the business press. The headline read, "Marcus Vance, the new loft king." He brought the magazine home beaming. "Look at this baby. We did it." He didn't mention me in the interview once. When I pointed it out gently, he kissed my forehead. "Honey, you know how the media is. They like a single narrative. Besides, you hate the spotlight. You're my secret weapon. The power behind the throne." I accepted it. I told myself it was for the family. I told myself that as long as the company succeeded, it didn't matter whose face was on the cover. I was a fool. For 20 years, I built the stage, set the lights, and wrote the script. Marcus just walked out and took the applause. And the company grew. We expanded into commercial properties, luxury condos, mixed-use developments. We were worth millions. But the company's structure, that was my masterpiece. Marcus was lazy with details. He hated reading contracts. He hated passwords. "You handle it," Evelyn was his favorite phrase. So I set up the digital infrastructure. I created the intricate web of LLCs to limit liability. I set up the automated bank transfers. And because Marcus was paranoid about employees stealing from him, he insisted on a localized, highly encrypted internal server for our most sensitive financial data. I want ghost access, he'd said. A master admin login that can bypass all other protocols in case we ever get locked out or held hostage by the IT staff. Just you and me will know the ghost access. But Marcus never bothered to memorize the complex 6-4 character string I generated. He wrote it on a post-it, kept it in his desk drawer for a week, then threw it away, assuming I'd always be there to type it in for him. He was right. I was always there. Until yesterday. Now sitting in the motel, I looked at the login screen for the Vance Fuentes private server. The VPN tunnel was secure. Marcus thought by calling the bank and removing me as a signatory, he'd cut me off. He thought by firing me through HR, he'd revoked my access. He relied on standard protocols. He relied on the front door. He forgot about the ghost access. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed in the string of characters. It was a line from a poem I loved mixed with the GPS coordinates of the first building we bought and the date Jacob lost his first tooth. Marcus didn't know any of those things. Authenticating, access granted, admin level. The screen flooded with data. The entire nervous system of Vance Fuentes properties was laid bare before me. Emails, wire transfers, transfer logs, tax documents, private chat histories. I wasn't just looking at a company. I was looking at the crime scene of my marriage. I started downloading. I didn't want just a few files. I wanted everything. Every email Marcus had sent in the last 5 years. Every expense report. Every transfer to the Cayman Islands or Switzerland. And that's when I saw it. A folder labeled Project B. It wasn't a construction project. The B was for Beatrice. I opened the folder, and the blood ran cold in my veins. This wasn't just an affair. This was grand-scale embezzlement. Dates, amounts, receipts. January 12th, $50,000 wire transfer to Miller Consulting LLC, Beatrice's maiden name. February 14th, $12,000 at Cartier. March 1st, $4,500 monthly rent for a luxury suite at the Plaza Hotel. He'd been keeping Beatrice like a concubine on company money for 3 years. But it was deeper. I saw wire transfers to a shell company I didn't recognize, Orion Investments LLC. The signatory on Orion wasn't Marcus, it was Beatrice. And the assets being moved to Orion weren't just cash. They were deeds. Marcus was slowly transferring the titles of our most valuable debt-free properties to a company owned by my sister. He was hollowing out Vance Fuentes properties, preparing to leave me with the empty shell, while he and Beatrice walked away with the assets. I felt sick. This wasn't just replacing me as a wife. This was a full-scale heist. But as I scrolled through the documents, a cold smile touched my lips. Marcus was an actor, not an architect. He didn't understand the paperwork he was signing. In his arrogance and Beatrice's greed, they had made mistakes. Sloppy amateur mistakes. They had forged my signature on the deed transfers. I could see it on the PDFs, a clumsy digital copy-paste of my signature from a different document. And on the Orion Investments operating agreement, Beatrice had listed her permanent address. It was my address. The house I paid for. I had them. I had them cold. But I couldn't strike yet. If I went to the police now, Marcus would claim it was a clerical error. He'd pay a fine and bury me in litigation for years. He had money for expensive lawyers. I had $10. No, I needed to let them hang themselves. I needed them to feel secure. I needed them to think I was defeated, broke, and hiding in a hole somewhere. I closed the laptop. I had the blueprints for their destruction. Now I just needed to build the trap. The digital evidence of Project B burned in my mind, forcing me to recall exactly how Beatrice had slithered her way into my sanctuary. It started 5 years ago, a time when Vance Fuentes Properties was booming, and my guard was down. Beatrice had just gone through her 3rd divorce. Her ex-husband, a decent mechanic named David, had left her because she refused to get a job and spent his salary on designer handbags she couldn't afford. She showed up on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a sob story that would have won an Oscar. "He was abusive, Evelyn," she cried, throwing herself into my arms. I later learned abusive meant he'd cut off her credit card. I have nowhere to go. Mom said you would help me. Carol called me 10 minutes later. "Evelyn, you have that big house with all those empty guest rooms? Let your sister stay for a few weeks. She just needs to get back on her feet. Family helps family." I agreed. I always agreed. 1 week turned into 6 months. Beatrice spent her days lounging by my pool, drinking my wine and criticizing my landscapers. Marcus at the time seemed annoyed by her presence. She's a freeloader, Evelyn, he'd complain. She treats our house like a hotel. I'd defend her. She's grieving Marcus. Give her time. Then came the request. I need a job. Beatrice announced one night at dinner. I'm bored. I want to work for you guys. I nearly choked. Beatrice, we run a commercial real estate firm. It's high pressure. What skills do you have for that? I'm good with people, she insisted. I can be, I don't know, client relations. I can plan the parties. I can talk to the investors. You guys are so serious. You need someone fun. No, I said. It was one of the few times I set a boundary. But Carol stepped in. She drove 40 minutes to have coffee with me. Evelyn, this is Beatrice's chance to be responsible. If you don't give her a job, she'll spiral. Do you want her living on your couch forever? Give her a salary. Let her move out. Marcus thinks it's a good idea. I blinked. Marcus does. I spoke to him, Carol said smoothly. He thinks Beatrice could help soften the company's image. You know you can be a little intense, honey, I confronted Marcus. You want to hire Beatrice? Marcus shrugged, adjusting his tie. Your mother has a point. We need someone to handle the social stuff, the galas, the charity events. You hate that stuff. Let her do it. Pay her an assistant's salary. Get her out of the house. We all win. I caved. I created a position director of special events. At first, it seemed to work. Beatrice moved into an apartment which I subsidized and organized the company Christmas party. It was lavish, over budget, but a success. Then the subtle shifts began. Beatrice started coming into the office every day, dressed not in business attire, but in form-fitting dresses that were just on the edge of inappropriate. She'd spend hours in Marcus's office discussing event logistics. I'd walk past and hear them laughing. Whenever I entered the room, they'd go quiet. What's so funny, I'd ask, feeling a prickle of unease. Just a joke about a client, Beatrice would say, smiling that saccharine smile. You wouldn't get it, Evelyn. It's an inside thing. She started joining us for business lunches. Then she started replacing me at them. Evelyn, you stay back and finish the quarterly projections, Marcus would say. Beatrice and I will take the developers to the steakhouse. You know you hate small talk. And I did hate small talk. I loved the work. So I let them go. I'd stay in the office, eating a salad at my desk, crunching the numbers, making sure our profit margins were healthy, while my husband and my sister were drinking dry martinis and laughing at my expense. I noticed changes in Marcus. He started dressing younger. He bought a Porsche he didn't need. He started staying out late for networking. When I voiced my concerns, Carol gaslit me into infinity. You're being paranoid, Evelyn, she'd scold. You should be happy Marcus and Beatrice get along. Most men hate their sisters-in-law. It's a blessing. Don't ruin it with your jealousy. It's unbecoming. Jealousy. She made me feel like a crazy, insecure shrew. Now, looking at the Project B folder on my laptop, I saw the reality. The networking dinners were dates. The business trips to Miami were vacations. And the consulting fees paid to Beatrice were actually her allowance for being his mistress. The snake hadn't just snuck into the garden. I had opened the gate, invited it in, and given it warm milk. And the worst part, my mother had held the gate open. Carol had brokered this. She had pushed Beatrice at Marcus, knowing exactly what Beatrice was capable of. She wanted Beatrice to have the life I had built because in her twisted mind, Beatrice deserved the kingdom, and I was just the builder meant to put it up and walk away. I slammed my hand on the cheap motel desk. The pain grounded me. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. You want to play the fun, irresponsible game? Let's see how fun it is when the architect pulls out the load-bearing wall. I spent the next 6 hours in a forensic accounting trance. The ghost access gave me entry to everything, but I had to be careful. If I made any changes, if I altered any files, the system logs could alert the IT director, a man named Esteban, who used to be loyal to me but who now no doubt answered to Marcus. So I became a ghost. I copied, I downloaded, I took screenshots. I traced the flow of money. It was worse than I thought. Vance Fuentes Properties was bleeding cash to fund their lifestyle, and the transfers to Beatrice's shell company. Marcus had stopped paying vendors. We were 3 months behind on payments to the construction crews for the new high-rise in the financial district. We were in default on the interest for 2 major loans. Marcus was robbing Peter to pay Beatrice. The company my life's work was a house of cards. If the creditors found out, we'd be insolvent in 30 days. But then I found something that made me sit bolt upright. It was an email chain between Marcus and a private investigator named Valentino Investigations. The date was from 2 years ago. Subject surveillance target E. Fuentes. Marcus, I need dirt. Anything. Infidelity, substance abuse, mental instability. I need grounds to void the prenup. Valentino Mr. Vance, we've tailed her for 6 months. She goes to work, she goes to the grocery store, she goes to her mother's house. She works late. There's no dirt. The woman is a saint. Marcus, dig deeper or make something up. I can't afford to give her half. My breath hitched. 2 years. He'd been planning to get rid of me for 2 years but couldn't find a way to do it without losing money. And then a more recent email dated 1 week ago. Marcus, forget the dirt. We're going with the mental breakdown angle. Her family will testify. Her mother and sister are on board. We'll claim she's overworked, paranoid, unfit to lead. We'll force a vote of no confidence at the board. Once she's out, we trigger the buyout clause at the lowest valuation. Carol, I can testify that she's been erratic lately, very emotional. I'm worried about her, Marcus. We need to do what's best for the company. I stared at the screen, tears of rage blurring my vision. My mother. My own mother was conspiring to have me declared mentally unstable so her golden child could steal my husband and my money. It was Shakespearean. You want erratic, I'll show you erratic. I dug deeper. I needed leverage. The fraud evidence was good, but it would take time to play out in court. I needed something immediate, something that would terrify Marcus. I found it in the tax filings. Last year, to secure a massive loan from a private equity firm, Marcus had inflated the occupancy rates of our commercial properties. He had forged lease agreements. He had physically faked the signatures of tenants that didn't exist. This wasn't just civil fraud. This was bank fraud. This was a federal crime with jail time. And the loan documents were signed by Marcus Vance, CEO. My signature wasn't on them. I had been out of town for my aunt's funeral that week, a funeral Beatrice skipped, and Marcus had said he'd handle the paperwork. He had signed his own death warrant and didn't even know it. I copied the loan documents. I copied the fake leases. I created a dossier that was a nuclear bomb. I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. I'd been working for 12 hours straight. I was hungry, I hadn't showered, and I was running on pure adrenaline. I needed a burner phone. I couldn't use my cell. They were probably tracking it or pulling the records. I went to a convenience store across the street, buying a cheap prepaid phone with cash. Back in the room, I sat on the bed and stared at the new phone. Who could I call? My friends. Most were couple friends shared with Marcus. They'd likely side with charming Marcus or stay neutral. My family, obviously not. My employees, too risky. I needed someone powerful. Someone who hated Marcus. Someone with the resources to wage a war. One man popped into my head, Arthur Vance. Arthur Vance was a billionaire real estate magnate in New York. Old money, ruthless but principled. 3 years ago, Marcus had beaten Arthur in a bidding war for a prime piece of land in the Hudson Yards development. Marcus had won by bribing a city councilman to rezone the land, a move I had argued against fiercely, but that Marcus did behind my back. Arthur had suspected foul play. He had publicly called Marcus an upstart in a cheap suit. Marcus had laughed it off, but Arthur had never forgotten. If I went to Arthur Vance with proof of Marcus's fraud, specifically the fraud that screwed Arthur out of that deal, it was a long shot. Arthur might just laugh in my face. He might throw me out. But he was the only person in New York with enough power to shield me from Marcus's legal team. I dialed the number for Vance Enterprises. I knew it by heart. I'd looked at it enough times when we were rivals. Vance Enterprises, Office of the Chairman, a crisp voice answered. I need to speak with Mr. Vance. Immediately. Mr. Vance is in meetings. May I ask what this is regarding? Tell him it's Evelyn Fuentes. Tell him I know how Marcus Vance got the Hudson Yards parcel rezoned. And tell him I have the emails. There was a pause. 1 moment, please. 30 seconds later, a deep, gravelly voice came on the line. Mrs. Fuentes. To what do I owe the pleasure? Did your husband send you over to gloat? My husband just fired me, drained my bank accounts, and moved his mistress into my house, I said, my voice steady. I'm not here to gloat, Mr. Vance. I'm here to reduce him to ashes. And I thought you might want to bring the marshmallows. Silence. Then a low chuckle. I'm listening. Before I went to meet Arthur Vance, there was one more wound I had to cauterize. One file I had been avoiding in the Vance Fuentes database, Jacob's Trust Fund. Jacob was my weak spot, my Achilles heel. I had shielded him from Marcus's narcissism his entire life. When Marcus forgot Jacob's birthday, I'd buy the gift and sign Marcus's name. When Marcus missed Jacob's soccer games, I'd tell Jacob that Dad was working hard for our future. I had raised him to believe his father was a hero, papering over the reality that his father was a neglectful egomaniac. I realize now that was my greatest mistake. I had protected Jacob from the truth, and in doing so, I had allowed Marcus to buy his loyalty with lies. I opened the trust fund documents. Marcus had recently amended the terms. Originally, the fund was to pay out at age 25 conditional on college graduation. The new terms dated 2 weeks ago, immediate access to a $200,000 cash provision, transfer of title for the 2023 Porsche 911, and the attached correspondence. Jacob, Dad, Mom's gonna flip if I drop out next semester. Marcus, Mom's not going to be in charge much longer, Jay. She treats you like a kid. I treat you like a man. You want the car, you want the cash, you just have to back me up when the time comes. You have to tell the lawyers, Mom's been acting strange that she's unstable. Jacob, well, she has been kind of stressed lately. Marcus, exactly. She's losing it. We need to protect the company. If you stick with me, I'll make you VP of Acquisitions next year. No degree needed. You can learn on the job just like I did. Jacob, VP, seriously. Okay. I'm in. What do I need to do? I read the words and my heart didn't just break. It atomized. Vice President of Acquisitions Jacob was failing intro to economics. He spent his weekends playing video games and sleeping until noon. He wasn't qualified to run a lemonade stand, let alone a department in a multi-million-dollar firm. Marcus was setting him up to fail, stroking his ego to use him as a pawn against me. And Jacob, my sweet boy, had sold his mother out for a Porsche and a title he hadn't earned. I remembered the text he sent me last night. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition. He wasn't worried about tuition. He was worried about the easy money. I pulled up Jacob's credit card statement, the one I paid. Liquor store, nightclub, online gambling, nightclub, strip club. He was in a downward spiral, and instead of parenting him, Marcus was funding that spiral to buy an ally. I picked up my burner phone. I hesitated. It was my son, but the boy who sat on that couch and told me to accept reality wasn't the boy I raised. He was his father's creation. If I continued to cushion his fall, I would lose him forever to Marcus's world of corruption and superficiality. The only way to save him, to truly save him, was to let him crash. I typed out a text. I didn't send it yet. I just wrote it staring at the cursor. Jacob, I saw the emails. I saw the car. You chose the easy way, but the easy way is a trap. When your father is done using you, he will discard you, just like he did me. I love you enough to let you learn this the hard way. Good luck, Mr. Vice President. I saved the draft. I wiped my eyes. I navigated to the payroll system. I removed Jacob from the intern payroll he'd been on for 3 years despite never setting foot in the office. I couldn't touch the trust fund. Marcus controlled that now. But I could touch the health insurance. Jacob was on my policy. The policy I paid for personally. Remove dependent Jacob Vance. Reason, no longer a full-time student. It was petty. It was small. But it was the first time in 21 years I hadn't fixed something for him. My phone buzzed. It was the address for the meeting with Arthur Vance. 1 hour. The University Club. Come alone. I closed the laptop, went to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. I tried to smooth my hair. My suit was wrinkled, but I brushed it off. I put on a layer of lipstick, my armor. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back looked tired, yes, but she looked dangerous. She looked like a mother who had lost her cubs and had nothing left to lose. You want unstable, Marcus, I said to my reflection. I'm about to show you an earthquake. I walked into the University Club in the same wrinkled suit I'd fled my house in, carrying a laptop bag that contained enough evidence to send my husband to federal prison. The doorman looked at me skeptically. This place smelled of old money, leather, and mahogany, a world Arthur Vance ruled. I found him in the library, sitting in a leather armchair reading the Wall Street Journal. He was 65 with silver hair and eyes like polished flint. He didn't stand as I approached. Mrs. Fuentes, he said, folding his paper. You look terrible. I feel terrible, I admitted, sinking into the chair opposite him. But my brain is working perfectly. You mentioned the Hudson Yards deal, Arthur said, getting straight to the point. You said you had proof. I opened my laptop. I wasted no time on pleasantries. I pulled up the dossier I'd compiled in the motel room. I turned the screen toward him. 3 years ago, Marcus beat you to the Hudson Yards parcel. You suspected he bribed the city councilman Francisco Miller. You were right. Arthur leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Here's the wire transfer, I said, pointing at the screen. $50,000 to a shell company called Miller Management. And here are the emails between Marcus and Miller discussing the fee for expedited rezoning. Marcus was sloppy. He used his personal email for the initial contact. Arthur scanned the documents. His expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to grow colder. Why are you showing me this now? You were the COO. You profited from this deal. I didn't know, I said, my voice steady. Marcus kept a second set of books. I found them last night after he threw me out of my house, froze my accounts, and moved my sister into my bed. Arthur looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. His sister and my mother are cheering them on. I added, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. It's a real family affair, and I'm the only one not invited. I took a breath. Mr. Vance, I'm not here to gossip. I'm here to make a deal. Marcus is trying to destroy me. He's forged my signature on fraudulent loans. He's embezzling from the company. He's going to leave Vance Fuentes Properties a smoking crater. And you want me to save you? Arthur asked, raising an eyebrow. No, I want you to help me bury him. And in exchange, I will give you the Hudson Yards property. Arthur paused. Continue. Marcus is overleveraged. He's cash poor. He's about to default on his construction loans. If you step in now as a white knight investor, offering a bridge loan to save the project, he'll take it. He's desperate. And in the loan agreement, we include a collateral clause. If he defaults, which he will because I know the real numbers, you get the assets. Specifically the deed to Hudson Yards. Arthur stared at me for a long moment. The silence stretched thick and tense. Then a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. You're a vengeful woman, aren't you, Arthur? Said softly. I'm an efficient one, I corrected. Marcus thinks I'm a scorned wife who's going to go cry in a corner. He doesn't realize I'm the one who wrote his business plan. Arthur closed my laptop and pushed it back toward me. I like you, Evelyn. You have guts. Marcus always struck me as a peacock. All feathers, no flight. But you're a hawk. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling my personal counsel. He's the best litigator in New York. He'll represent you in the divorce, pro bono. Consider it an investment in our new partnership. Thank you, I whispered, relief flooding through me. And Evelyn. Arthur added, his eyes hard. Don't disappoint me. If we do this, we destroy him utterly. I'm taking him back when he cries. He won't be crying, I said, thinking of Marcus's smirk when he took my ring. He'll be screaming. Arthur nodded. Good. Now let's get you a hotel room that doesn't charge by the hour. You can't plan a war if you haven't slept. That night I slept in a suite at the Plaza, paid for by Vance Enterprises. I took a long bath, scrubbing the grime of the motel from my skin. As I lay between the clean, crisp sheets, I felt a profound shift inside me. For 20 years, I had been the fixer. I had smoothed over Marcus's mistakes, cleaned up his messes, made him look good. I had been the invisible glue holding it all together. Now I was going to be the solvent. I was going to dissolve everything he thought he owned. I picked up my burner phone and sent Arthur a single-word text. Ready. 3 days later, the trap was set. Arthur's lawyer, a terrifyingly calm man named David Cuesta, had drafted the divorce settlement. It was a masterpiece of legal misdirection. On the surface, it looked like a total surrender. The proposal: Marcus keeps the family home. Marcus keeps full ownership of Vance Fuentes Properties. Evelyn receives a one-time lump sum of $500,000, a fraction of what I was owed. Evelyn relinquishes all claims to future alimony. It looked like I was giving up. It looked like I was broken, desperate for cash, and just wanted to run away. Marcus would love it. It fed his ego perfectly. But buried deep in the 60-page document in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 4, was the poison pill clause. In the event that either party to this agreement is found to have engaged in undisclosed criminal activity, fraud, or embezzlement during the marriage, or is convicted of a felony within 24 months of signing this agreement in its entirety, shall be rendered null and void. In such a case, all assets, including 100% of company shares and real property, shall revert to the non-offending party as punitive damages. Marcus never read the fine print. He paid lawyers to do that. But his lawyer, Richard Valentino, was lazy. I knew because I used to pay his invoices. Valentino would scan contracts looking for the big numbers, the settlement, the alimony. He wouldn't be looking for a specific reversion clause buried in boilerplate liability text. I met Marcus and his lawyer at Valentino's office. I wore no makeup. I wore an old sweater. I kept my head down, staring at the floor. I needed to sell the image of the defeated woman. Marcus strode in like he owned the world. He was wearing a new Italian suit and smelled of expensive cologne, likely a gift from Beatrice. Well, look what crawled out of the woodwork, Marcus sneered as he sat down. I hope you're ready to sign, Evelyn. Beatrice and I have wedding invitations to order. Just give me the check, I said, my voice trembling. I just want to be gone, Marcus. I can't fight you anymore. Marcus laughed, looking at Valentino. See, I told you she'd fold. She doesn't have the stomach for this. Valentino slid the papers across the table. Standard agreement, Evelyn. You walk away with $500,000 and a clean slate. Just sign here, here, and here. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking, part acting, part pure adrenaline. And Jacob, I asked softly. Jacob stays with me, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. He's my VP now. We're going to build an empire together without your constant nagging. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but I swallowed it. Okay, just take care of him. Sign the damn papers, Evelyn. I put my name on the line that ostensibly signed away 20 years of my hard work. Then Marcus signed. He did it with a flourish, a big, arrogant M. Done, Valentino said, closing the folder. The check will be wired to your account by morning. Marcus stood and buttoned his jacket. He looked down at me with a smirk that made my skin crawl. You know, Evelyn, you should thank me. You were always too uptight for this life. Go live on a farm or something. Find a nice librarian. Goodbye, Marcus, I whispered. As he walked to the elevator, I could hear Marcus laughing with Valentino. That was easier than I thought. She didn't even ask for the beach house. The elevator doors closed, cutting off his laughter. I leaned against the metal wall and let out a long, slow breath. He'd signed. The poison pill was active. Now all I had to do was prove the fraud. And I already had the proof. I just needed the right stage to present it. And what better stage than a wedding? Marcus and Beatrice had announced the date. It was in 3 weeks. A whirlwind romance, they called it. They wanted to be legitimized before the spring gala season. 3 weeks? That was my deadline. I walked out of the building and into Arthur's waiting town car. He signed, Arthur asked from the back seat. He signed, I said, a genuine smile finally breaking through. He thinks he bought my silence for $500,000. He just signed over his entire life. Arthur poured me a glass of sparkling water. To the architect. To the demolition, I replied. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in masochism. I had to remain invisible, while Marcus and Beatrice flaunted their victory all over New York. I rented a small, discreet apartment on the Upper West Side using my maiden name. I spent my days with Arthur's forensic accountants building the case. We were turning the raw data I'd stolen into a legal sledgehammer. Every night, I tortured myself by checking social media. Beatrice's Instagram was a vomit of luxury. Picture of a new Mercedes convertible. My future hubby is spoiling me. Number blessed. Number new beginnings. Picture of my dining room redecorated with tacky gold wallpaper. Out with the old, in with the glam. Finally making this house a home. Number dream life. That one hurt, seeing her erase my touch from the home I built. But the most painful posts came from my mother. Carol posted a picture of the three of them, Marcus, Beatrice, and herself, clinking champagne glasses at a tasting menu dinner. Caption: finally a family that knows how to enjoy life. So proud of my beautiful daughter Beatrice and my wonderful son-in-law Marcus. True love always wins. True love. She had sold out her eldest daughter for a seat at a fancy table. And Jacob. Jacob was quiet on social media, but I saw the credit card alerts from the secondary accounts. I still monitored the ones Marcus hadn't found yet. Uncle Pepe's Steakhouse, $400. Marquee Nightclub, $1.200. Bail bonds, $500. My son was in a freefall. Marcus wasn't parenting him. He was enabling him. I wanted to rush in and save him, but Arthur stopped me. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, Evelyn, Arthur told me gently. He chose his side. Let him see what that side is really like when the lights go out. I knew he was right, but it felt like severing a limb. Meanwhile, the company was rotting from the inside. My spies, Sarah in accounting and James in project management, gave me daily updates. Marcus hasn't been in the office past 2 p.m. in weeks, Sarah texted. He's letting Beatrice plan the company rebrand. She wants to change the logo to pink and gold. Pink and gold Evelyn. For a commercial real estate firm. Contractors are threatening to walk off the Highland site, James reported. Marcus said the check's in the mail. It's not. He used the construction funds to pay for the wedding venue. Let it burn, I told them. Just document everything. Save every email where he tells you to delay payments. The wedding was set to be at the Plaza Hotel in the Grand Ballroom. It was the most expensive venue in the city. Beatrice had invited 300 people, investors, politicians, local celebrities. They wanted to cement their status as New York's new power couple. They wanted an audience. Good, I thought, looking at the invitation Sarah had snagged for me. You want a show? I'll give you a show. 2 days before the wedding, I received one final piece of leverage. It came from an unexpected source. My phone rang unknown number. Hello, Evelyn. It's David. David. Beatrice's ex-husband. The mechanic she had bled dry. David, I said, shocked. How are you? I'm okay. Look, I heard about what happened. What they did to you. It's disgusting. It is, I agreed. I have something, David said, his voice low. When Beatrice left me, she left a box of papers in the garage. I was going to burn them, but I went through them last night. Evelyn, did you have credit cards in your name from 3 years ago? The blood froze in my veins. What? She opened them when she was staying with you. She was intercepting the mail. She maxed them out and then hid the statements. But I found the letters from the collection agencies. And I found a letter from Marcus. From Marcus, yeah. He paid off one of the cards. The letter says, I've covered this one B, but you need to be more careful. If Evelyn sees this on her credit report, we're both dead. Stick to the plan. 2 more years and we take it all. 2 more years. The timeline fit perfectly. Marcus had been conspiring with my sister to steal my identity and my money while I was feeding her and giving her a job. David, I said, my voice shaking. Can you get me that box? I'm on my way, he said. When David handed me that box, I felt the final lock click into place. This wasn't just fraud. This was a predatory, calculated evil conspiracy. I looked at the handwritten letter from Marcus. 2 more years, and we take it all. I placed the letter in my safe. Thank you, David, I said. Give him hell, Evelyn, he said with a grim smile. Oh, I plan to, I replied. I plan to give them the whole damn inferno. The day before the wedding, I did something dangerous. I went to see Jacob. I knew I shouldn't. Arthur advised against it. But I was a mother first, a vengeful ex-wife second. I needed to give him one last chance to get off the sinking ship. I waited outside his new penthouse, the one Marcus had bought with company funds. At 11 a.m., Jacob stumbled out looking hungover. He was wearing designer sunglasses and a sweatshirt that cost more than my first car. Jacob, I called. He flinched, turning. When he saw me, his face hardened. Mom, what are you doing here? Are you stalking me now? I'm not stalking you. I'm trying to save you. I don't need saving, he spat, walking toward his Porsche. I'm doing great. Dad just put me in charge of the Southern portfolio. Jacob, listen to me, I said, stepping in his path. Your father is lying to you. The company is bankrupt. He's stealing money to pay for this lifestyle. He's using you as a shield. When the feds come, and they are coming, your name is on the documents. Jacob laughed. It was a hollow, brittle sound. You're just jealous. You're jealous because Dad is winning and you're a nobody. You're living in some slum, right? Dad told me. I'm living in reality. I said, my voice urgent. Jacob, please, don't go to the wedding tomorrow. Just say you're sick. Go out with your friends. Just don't be there standing next to him when it happens. When what happens, he challenged. Are you going to crash it? Are you going to make a scene? God, you're pathetic, Mom. Dad said you'd try to ruin it. He called me pathetic. I felt the anger rise, but I pushed it down. Jacob, look at me. I raised you. I know you. You are not this person. You are kind. You are smart. You are not a thief. I'm not a thief, he yelled, his face flushing. I'm a businessman like Dad. Dad is a fraud, I yelled back. And Beatrice is a parasite. And if you stand with them, you will go down with them. Jacob glared at me. Then he pulled out his phone. I'm calling security. Get away from me. He got in his car and revved the engine aggressively. As he peeled out of the parking spot, he rolled down the window and shouted, Don't come tomorrow, Mom. No one wants you there. You're the past. I watched him drive away, my heart breaking all over again. But this time the break was cleaner. I had tried. I had reached out my hand. He had slapped it away. He was on his own now. I drove back to my apartment. Arthur was waiting for me with the final preparations. "How did it go?" he asked, though he clearly knew the answer from my face. "He's gone," I said flatly. "He's been completely brainwashed. Then he will learn the hard way," Arthur said. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" "Yes. We have the access codes to the projector." "Yes." "The police have been briefed." "Yes." "Inspector Miller is meeting us in the lobby at 8 p.m. Arthur handed me a garment bag. "Then you'll need this." I unzipped the bag. Inside was a suit. Not a frantic, desperate ex-wife dress. It was a sharp, tailored black Yves Saint Laurent tuxedo. Powerful, elegant, severe. "Put on your armor," Evelyn, Arthur said. "Tomorrow you are not the victim. You are the executioner." I touched the fabric. It was cool and smooth. "Thank you, Arthur. Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be a long night." I didn't rest. I sat by the window watching the city lights. I thought of Marcus and Beatrice probably rehearsing their vows at that very moment, probably laughing about how they'd gotten away with it all. 2 more years and we take it all. They wouldn't get 2 years. They wouldn't even get 2 days. Tomorrow, Mr. and Mrs. Vance were going to have a very different kind of reception. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and overcast. A perfect day in New York for a funeral. I spent the morning going over the presentation. We had it timed perfectly. It would start just after the love story video montage that Beatrice had commissioned for $20,000. At 6 p.m., the guests started to arrive at the plaza. I watched the live feed from a camera Arthur had installed in the ballroom. He had a stake in the hotel. Getting access was trivial. It was nauseating. The room was dripping with crystals and pink roses, thousands of them. There was an ice sculpture of Marcus and Beatrice intertwined. I saw my mother Carol greeting guests. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress that was too young for her, beaming like she'd won the lottery. "Yes, isn't it wonderful?" I heard her say to a confused-looking cousin. "They're soulmates." Evelyn... Oh, poor Evelyn just couldn't handle Marcus's success. "She's taking some time away." I saw Marcus. He looked nervous but triumphant. He was shaking hands, slapping backs, playing the part of the benevolent king. And Beatrice. She swept in wearing a custom Vera Wang gown draped in diamonds. Diamonds my company paid for. She looked beautiful. I had to admit it. Beautiful and rotten. The ceremony began. I listened to them exchange vows. "I promise to be your partner in all things," Marcus said, looking deep into Beatrice's eyes. "I promise to support your dreams and spend my life making you happy," Beatrice cooed. I was sitting in the hotel suite upstairs nursing a black coffee. "Lies," I whispered. "Every word is a lie." "Are we set?" Arthur asked, checking his watch. "The feed is live," the technician confirmed. "The second you give the word, we hijack the stream." "Not yet," I said. "Wait for the toasts. Wait until everyone is seated and watching the screens." The reception began. The champagne flowed. Marcus stood to give a speech. "I want to thank you all for being here," he boomed, holding Beatrice's hand. "This has been a long journey, a journey to find true happiness. Sometimes you have to make hard choices to find your true destiny." The crowd clapped politely, though I saw a few uncomfortable glances. Everyone knew the scandal. They just didn't care as long as the open bar was top shelf. "And to my new wife," Beatrice, Marcus continued. "You are my muse, my rock, my everything." My phone buzzed. It was the signal. "Now," I said. Down in the ballroom, the lights dimmed for the video montage. Sentimental music began to play. Pictures of Marcus and Beatrice on yachts in Paris on the beach flashed across the huge screens behind the head table. The crowd oohed and awed. I stood up and smoothed the jacket of my tuxedo. I walked out of the suite and toward the elevator. "Showtime," Arthur said, walking beside me. Inside the elevator, I watched the numbers descend. 10, 9, 8. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was beating slow and heavy like a war drum. The elevator doors opened on the lobby level. Inspector Miller and 2 uniformed officers were waiting. "Mrs. Fuentes," the inspector asked. "Yes. You have the warrant, we do. We're ready when you are." Give me 5 minutes, I said. I want them to see it before you put the cuffs on. Understood. I walked toward the ballroom doors. The security guards Marcus had hired to keep me out stepped forward. Ma'am, this is a private event. Arthur Vance stepped out from behind me. And I own the building. Step aside or you'll be looking for work tomorrow. The guards hesitated, recognized Arthur, and immediately stepped back. I pushed open the double doors. Inside, the music had just reached a crescendo. The video on screen showed Marcus and Beatrice kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and then the screen flickered. The music cut off with a screech of feedback. The room fell silent. On the huge screens, the romantic image dissolved. In its place appeared a stark spreadsheet, red numbers, and then a document. A credit card statement. Name Beatrice Miller. Address 124 Robles Street, Greenwich, CT. My house. Purchase diamond ring Cartier, $25,000. Paid by Vance Fuentes' corporate account. A murmur went through the crowd. What is that? Beatrice hissed, half rising. Marcus, fix it! Cut the feed! Marcus yelled at the AV booth. Shut it down. But the technician in the booth was ours. He didn't shut it down. He turned up the volume. And then my pre-recorded voice boomed through the speakers. Hello, Marcus. Hello, Beatrice. You wanted a family affair. You wanted everyone to witness your union. Well, let's show them what this union is really built on. Every head turned. Not to the screen, but to the back of the room. Where I was standing, the silence in the grand ballroom was absolute. 300 pairs of eyes swiveled in their chairs to stare at me. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the marble floor. The black tuxedo made me look like a shadow against the sea of pink flowers. Marcus was frozen at the head table, his face draining of all color. Beatrice was clutching her napkin to her chest, her mouth agape. My mother, Carol, looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Evelyn Marcus whispered the microphone, picking up his trembling voice. What are you doing? I didn't stop until I reached the center of the dance floor directly in front of the head table. I looked up at them, the people who had been my world now just small, scared figures on a stage. I'm here to make a toast, I said, my voice projecting clearly without need of a microphone. I held up a small remote, clicked it. The screen behind them changed again. This time, it was the email chain between Marcus and the private investigator. Marcus, dig deeper or make something up. I can't afford to give her half. The crowd gasped. I saw investors' men, Marcus respected men, he needed leaning in, whispering furiously. Turn it off, Marcus screamed, lunging toward the DJ booth. Security, get her out of here. Sit down, Marcus. Arthur Vance's voice boomed from the entrance. Unless you want to add assault to your list of felonies. Marcus froze. He saw Arthur. He saw the police officers waiting in the shadows of the exit. This is fake, Beatrice shrieked, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. She's jealous. She hacked the system. She's crazy. I clicked the remote again. A new document appeared, the forged loan application for the Hudson Yards project, the one with my signature, clumsily pasted on. Is forgery crazy, Beatrice? I asked calmly. Is bank fraud crazy? Because that's jail time. And guess whose name is on the shell companies receiving the stolen funds? I clicked again. Orion Investments. Owner Beatrice Miller. I pointed at her. You're not just a mistress. You're a mule. Marcus used you to launder $3 million. Did he tell you that? Did he tell you that? When the IRS comes looking, they're coming for your signature? Beatrice looked at Marcus, her eyes wide with horror. Marcus, you said it was tax optimization. You said it was legal. Shut up, Beatrice. Marcus hissed. Oh, don't stop him, I said, smiling coldly. Let him explain. Let him explain to our mother what he calls her. Click. The email appeared. Subject, the old woman. Marcus, just cut Carol another check from the B fund. The old woman is greedy. As long as we pay for her condo, she'll keep Evelyn in the dark. She'd sell out her own daughter for a renovation budget. Carol made a sound that was half gasp, half choke. She stood up, her hands shaking so badly she knocked over her champagne flute. Marcus, she rasped. You called me that. After everything I did for you, I took your side. I betrayed my own daughter for you. And what did it get you, Mom? I said, looking at her with pity. A seat at a wedding that's about to become a crime scene. Marcus looked around the room, his eyes wild. He saw his empire crumbling in real time. He saw the investors walking out. He saw the waiters stopping to stare. He saw the end. You signed the agreement, he screamed at me desperate. You signed it. You gave up everything. You can't touch the company. Section 14, I said simply. The poison pill. You commit a crime, the agreement is void, and everything, the house, the company, the assets, reverts to me. Marcus's knees gave out. He collapsed into his chair. And Jacob, I said, turning my gaze to my son who was sitting at the end of the table, pale as a ghost. Jacob looked at me terrified. He looked at the screen where his own text messages were now displayed. VP, seriously, okay, I'm in. You wanted to be a businessman, Jacob, I said softly. Well, here's your first lesson. Vet your partners. I clicked the remote one last time. A video played. It was surveillance footage from the company parking garage. It showed Marcus arguing with Beatrice 2 days prior. Marcus, on video. Once we get the loan from Vance, we ditch the kid. Jacob's a liability. We leave him with the tax debt and move to Monaco. He's too stupid to figure it out. The room was dead silent. Jacob rose slowly, staring at his father. The hero worship in his eyes was gone, replaced by a devastating understanding. Dad, Jacob whispered. You were going to… leave me, Marcus stammered. Javi, I was just stressed. It's out of context. You called me stupid, Jacob said, his voice breaking. You said I was a liability. Jacob, sit down, Marcus ordered, trying to regain control. Don't listen to her. Jacob didn't sit down. He picked up his champagne glass and threw it in Marcus's face. I hate you, Jacob screamed. I hate you! Chaos erupted. Carol was sobbing. Beatrice was hyperventilating. Marcus was wiping champagne off his face, looking like a drowned rat. I lowered the remote. The presentation was over. I nodded to Inspector Miller. The police entered the room. The guests parted like the Red Sea. Marcus Vance, the inspector, announced, "You are under arrest for bank fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Beatrice Miller, you are under arrest for conspiracy and money laundering." "No," Beatrice shrieked as an officer grabbed her wrists. "I didn't know, I'm just his fiancé. He made me do it. Tell it to the judge," the officer said, clicking the cuffs shut. Marcus didn't scream. He just stared at me. As they cuffed him, he locked eyes with me. "You've ruined everything," he spat. "You bitter, vengeful bitch!" I walked up to him. I stood so close I could smell his fear. "I didn't ruin anything, Marcus," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "I just turned on the lights. And you're just a cockroach who got caught." They dragged them away. The wedding guests stood in stunned silence. The only sound was Carol's weeping. I looked at the head table one last time. The cake was untouched, the flowers were perfect, the illusion was shattered. I turned to Arthur Vance. "I believe I'm done here." "Brilliant," Arthur said, offering me his arm. "Absolutely brilliant." As we walked out, I didn't look back at my weeping mother or my devastated son. Not yet. They had made their bed. Tonight they had to lie in it. The days after the wedding were a media circus. The Post ran the story on the front page, Blue S, at the nuptials real estate mogul arrested at altar. I gave no interviews. I let the evidence speak for itself. I moved back into my house 3 days later. The police had cleared it as a crime scene. It was strange walking back into the rooms I had designed. Beatrice's things were everywhere. Tacky clothes, cheap magazines, half-empty wine bottles. I hired a cleaning crew. "Throw it all out," I told them. "Anything that isn't mine. Burn the sheets. Replace the mattresses." I wanted to scrub her DNA from my life. Marcus was denied bail. The judge deemed him a flight risk because of the Monaco plan on tape. He was in Rikers trading his Italian suits for an orange jumpsuit. Beatrice made bail, paid for by my mother, who had liquidated her retirement savings to get her baby out. But Beatrice wasn't free. She was facing 5 to 10 years. Her face was all over the internet as the gold digger headed for the big house. I walked into the offices of Vance Fuentes, now solely mine. The employees greeted me with a mixture of fear and relief. "We're renaming the company," I announced at the first all-hands meeting. "Vance Fuentes is dead. Welcome to Phoenix Properties." They applauded. They knew who signed the checks now. A week later, my mother came to see me. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red. She stood on my porch, shivering. "Evelyn," she said, her voice thin. "Carol," I said, blocking the doorway. I couldn't call her Mom. "Can I come in? It's so cold." You can say what you need to say from there. She flinched. Evelyn, please be reasonable. Beatrice is terrified. She's just a girl. She didn't know what she was doing. Marcus manipulated her. Beatrice is 40 years old, I said coolly. She knew she was sleeping with my husband. She knew she was spending my money. She signed the papers. She's your sister, Carol wailed. You can't let her go to prison. You have to drop the charges. Tell the DA it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a felony. If you do this, Carol hissed her grief, turning to familiar venom. You are no daughter of mine. You are destroying this family. I laughed. It was a light-free sound. Carol, you destroyed this family 20 years ago when you decided Beatrice was the princess and I was the servant. You didn't come here to apologize. You came here to ask me to fix it again. You want me to be the scapegoat one last time so Beatrice can walk free. She's delicate, she's a felon. And you're an accomplice. I saw the checks Marcus wrote you. Consulting fees. You took money to help them manipulate me. Carol went pale. I'm not going to press charges against you, Carol, I said. Not because I love you, but because I don't want the shame of seeing my own mother in a mugshot. But you are dead to me. Don't call me. Don't come here. If you need money, ask Beatrice. Oh wait, she's broke. I closed the door in her face. I watched on the security camera as she stood there pounding on the door, screaming my name. Then shoulders slumped, she walked away. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it was the pain of pulling out a splinter. Sharp then relief. Then there was Jacob. He hadn't called, hadn't come by. I knew he was sleeping on a friend's couch because the authorities had seized the penthouse and the Porsche. I waited. I knew he had to come to me on his own terms. 2 weeks later, he appeared at my office. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. He was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt. No sunglasses, no attitude. Mom, he asked from the doorway. I looked up from my desk. Hello, Jacob. He walked in and sat in the chair opposite me. He stared at his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was so stupid. He made me feel important. He told me I was better than college. He told me you were holding me back. And you believed him because it was easier than working, I said soft but firm. Yes, he admitted, tears dripping onto his jeans. I saw the video. He called me a liability. He was going to abandon me. I have nothing, Mom. They took the car. I have no money. I need help. I looked at my son. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to write him a check and fix everything. But I was the architect now. And you don't build a strong structure on a cracked foundation. I love you, Jacob, I said. But I'm not giving you any money. He looked up terrified. But where will I live? I don't know. That's for you to figure out. Mom, please. Here's the deal, I said, sliding a paper across the desk. This is a student loan application. And this is a job application for the mailroom at Phoenix Properties. Minimum wage. You start at the bottom. You finish your degree at night. The mailroom, he asked, stunned. Take it or leave it. You want to be a man, Jacob, you earn it. Marcus gave you things to buy you. I'm offering you nothing so you can build yourself. He looked at the papers at me, saw the resolve in my eyes. Slowly, he reached out and took the pen. Okay, he said, his voice shaking. I'll take the job. Good, I said. Report to Sarah in HR. She'll get you an ID badge. Don't be late. He stood up. He looked at me. He really looked at me for the first time in years. You're kind of scary, Mom, he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. I know, I smiled. Now get to work. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Vega pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 8 years in federal prison plus restitution. He looked gray and defeated in the courtroom. He never once looked at me. Beatrice took a plea deal. 3 years in prison for fraud. She sobbed when the gavel fell, looking at Carol in the gallery, screaming, Mom, do something. But Carol could do nothing. Carol was living in a studio apartment, subsisting on Social Security, having lost both her allowance and her pride. I sat in the back row in my black suit. I watched justice be served. I didn't feel joy. I felt peace. The ledger was finally balanced. Epilogue. 1 year later, I was in my office on the 40th floor, overlooking Central Park. The Phoenix Properties sign on the wall behind me was a sleek silver and blue with no hint of pink. The company was thriving. We'd just broken ground on the Hudson Yards deal with Arthur Vance. It was going to be a mixed-use development with luxury condos, but also affordable housing and a community center. My phone buzzed. Javier, hey mom, just finished my econ final. Think I aced it. Also, the mailroom team improved sorting efficiency by 15% this week. Do I get a raise? I smiled. Don't push it, but dinner's on me tonight. 7 p.m. Jacob was working hard. He was tired, he was broke, and he was humble, and I had never been more proud of him. He was becoming the man I knew he could be, not the caricature his father tried to mold. There was a knock on my door. Come in. Arthur Vance walked in with a bottle of champagne. To the 1-year anniversary, he said. Of the day you burned down the circus. It feels like a lifetime ago, I said, accepting a glass. You know, Arthur said, leaning against my desk, Marcus sent me a letter from prison. Wants to know if I'll buy his shares in some old shell companies. He needs commissary money. What did you tell him? I told him I only do business with the CEO. And the CEO is busy building an empire. We clinked glasses. I looked out at the city skyline. I had lost a husband. I had lost a sister. I had lost a mother. But I had found myself. I was no longer the scapegoat, no longer the fixer, no longer the invisible wife. I was Evelyn Fuentes, the architect. And my life finally was truly my own. Thank you for listening to my story. It hasn't been easy to relive, but if my journey can help just one person stand up to the toxic people in their life, then it was worth it. Family isn't always blood. Family is the people who respect you, who value you, and who stand by you when the storm hits. If you're holding on to someone just because they're family but they are hurting you, let them go. You are strong enough to build something new. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? How did you find the strength? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone take the keys to your castle.